For those of you who don't know me, my name is Phil Rock. I'm a singer, musician, songwriter, and aspiring content creator. I'm also a lifelong activist. In the wake of the murders of Breonna Taylor and George Floyd, we have seen a reinvigoration of the Black Lives Matter movement. For many allies like myself, it has been difficult for us to find our place in a post-COVID-19 world. Personally, I felt like I could constantly be doing more. As a content creator, and especially a white content creator, I thought it was important for me to lift up Black voices. What I found though was that just sharing stuff on social media wasn't enough, as social media tends to take away the personal element of the stories. To make matters worse, when I'd watch a video of how content creators and entertainment platforms can make their spaces more inclusive, those conversations were always being had by people of color talking to other people of color. So while the right discussions were being had, the people who needed to hear them were not involved. This is partially due to our society's idea that racism is a Black problem. So this is the first video in what I hope ends up becoming a series where I talk to Black content creators and entertainers, allowing them to share their stories while letting us as white content creators become better allies and more aware of what we can do to make creative industries a more inclusive environment. So on to my first guest. When I came up with this idea, I knew exactly who I wanted to talk to first. My good friend and college roommate, Jaanna Anaemereibe. Jaanna and I both grew up in St. Louis. In fact, my mom taught at his high school. We've realized that there were probably a handful of times that we brushed shoulders. It wasn't until we both went to the University of Missouri that we ended up meeting and became roommates. Jaanna's worked all over the country holding various titles, from producing for ad agencies, creating content for YouTube, making movies, and even DJing a little. Jaanna has never shied away from letting his voice be heard and using his talents to help support the people around him. You can find him on Instagram under Basher Visuals or Saturday Sounds, where he supports many of his favorite artists, a lot of time independent artists. I'm extremely happy and thankful that he agreed to talk with me. So while we will be pretty entertaining at times, please watch, listen, and grow with us. I hope there's something you can take away from this conversation that can help you spread more consciousness and understanding into the world. The man, the myth, the legend.
Oh my God, gotta bring one for Will. What's up? How are you? Long time no see, man. You look like the lead singer of Coldplay.
I've suddenly transformed into Chris Martin, apparently.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I know his name is Chris something. Not hip enough. Not hip. How are you?
I'm surviving.
Yes, indeed. I can totally relate to that.
You know, you just moved in the middle of the pandemic, man.
Pretty much.
That's crazy.
There's boxes everywhere. It's kind of crazy.
Man.
I'm just kind of like going with the flow of it all, I guess.
Are you still in Atlanta?
I'm in North Carolina right now.
Oh, you're in North Carolina now. Okay.
Atlanta crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, a little bit.
That's crazy.
A little bit.
A little nuts. They're like Georgia's been on some wild shit all year, so.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like they just kind of always are.
Being Georgians.
Well, I mean, that's the thing is, like, anytime, like, I ever see somebody talk smack about, like, Florida, I'm like, dude, you know it's directly north of us, right? Like, you understand this. Florida gets this bad rap, but I'm like, dude, Alabama is a state. Like, how can you bash on Florida?
That's real.
Like, I lived in Missouri. Like, I know how crazy it can get in this world.
That's real. Like, I be thinking about that, too. Like, Missouri, I feel like Missouri's wild shit, though, is, like, kind of tame. Like it's like wild, but it's like okay, it's typical, right? You hear like typical racist shit, typical. I was like, all right, whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Typical racists, like
the shit that I be hearing about in Florida, Georgia, Alabama. I'm like, damn, this shit is creative. Yeah.
Like, so, like, one of the reasons why, like, I wanted to do this at all is because, like, especially as, like, someone who, like, you've done a lot of, like, different things. Like, you've done advertising, you've done, like, you know, I don't even know how many different types of fields you worked in this point. Like,
Your guess is as good as mine, bro.
Yeah, and everything you've done has been somehow like related to a creative world, like doing something content related, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like all the stuff that I'm seeing online, like all the interviews and like Zoom meeting things like this that I see online are like, you know, you have black people talking about the issues with other
Yeah.
black people, and you don't
Yeah.
see like a lot of like white people trying to like take an actual vested interest. And you know, like I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's part of the issue to me is like, so like I went to Anytown when I was in high school. I was one of four white men, and I remember talking to one of the counselors there, one of the advisors, and they were saying, you know, people when they see diversity training and when they see social justice training, they automatically think like, oh, we should send women and black students and
Mm-hmm.
minority students like that, and
Mm-hmm.
gay LGBTQ students.
Not the ones that are actually benefiting from patriarchy, but
Right.
like,
One of the things I try to explain to other, you know, white males especially is like
mm,
how privilege is a spectrum. People have different levels of privilege.
exactly.
Like, you
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
I try to explain that to them because like I didn't grow up rich. Like my
Right.
mom's single mother, special ed teacher, like
Right.
so like yeah, if I was driving to a friend's house in a wealthy neighborhood, I was more likely to get pulled over, but then they see I'm a white boy and they're like, "Okay, whatever, cool." The situation doesn't escalate. Nothing like that happens.
Yeah.
Whereas like I'm sure like you probably had at least one experience where you were like, especially in St. Louis County, where like you already got the one experience.
Right. That's what I'm like, okay, all right, I guess. Like that's like, I mean, in me, I was one to definitely stay at. I definitely tried to do my best to stay out of trouble, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's even when you're in it, you know, you see it. You see it's different. I can definitely go on examples of
Mm-hmm.
that. Where shit has just been like some things where it's kind of like, okay, you notice this is kind of off when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to like officers, and then some shit was just blatant, like, whoa, like they didn't even lie about it, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, okay, like, you know.
Yeah.
And just me being young and trying to stay alive, and young and trying to stay, like, you know, off out of the system, you know, when you kind of got those worries, you know, knowing that, hey, you don't really have anyone to bail you out of the situation if it goes left, you kind of you try to be more compliant to laws even if they're being unfair to you.
Yeah.
So
Since we both, you know, we met at Mizzou, and like I know that especially like once I remember once I left Mizzou. Were you there when like all the shit was going down at Mizzou where they had like the protests and like
the
the
hunger
football
strike.
players? Yeah,
Yeah.
like
No, that literally happened the semester after I left.
okay. So
But
wow.
I knew several of the people that were in it.
Yeah.
I was very close with John Butler and Ayanna. They were both like kind of the head ringers of it. Like I had took my capstone class with Ayanna, and when she was doing the hunger strike and everything. So it was crazy. I was in Portland, Oregon at the time, just kind of watching it,
Yeah.
and you know, just supporting any way that I could. But it was like, damn, so many of these people that are on that hunger strike right now are people that I know, you know,
Yeah.
not even like people that I know, and I would be texting them and talking to them, like, you know, getting updates and just seeing other ways that I could help in any type of way, and, you know, just kind of like getting the explanation of things. I will say, when Mike Brown got killed,
Mm-hmm.
campus shit on campus changed,
Yeah.
like real quick, like and to the point where you had professors, you know, like lecture,
Mm-hmm.
like big lecture courses, like students were walking out of the courses because there was about to be a protest going on. And,
Wow.
you know, so there was a divide between professors, and some professors would be like, oh, you can't do that, don't just leave my class.
Of
And
course.
then there'll be other professors that understood, like, you know, hey, if you don't come to class this day, I understand, you won't be marked as absent or anything like that, you know.
Right.
And so like and there was even one professor, I forgot her name, I wish I remember her name, because
Mm-hmm.
that was so dope. She ended class early to also
Wow.
be a part of the protest, and this was a white professor, this was a
Yeah.
white woman too, and everything.
That
So
that was the thing. I like I didn't have a ton of multicultural friends when I first got to
Yeah.
Mizzou. Especially, I mean, I was in marching Mizzou, like, you know,
You were marching. Yeah.
like even as far as bands go, like that is a pretty whitewashed like marching band.
Yeah.
Um, but like, you
I feel like
know,
if it's not in an HBCU, any other marching band is gonna be pretty whitewashed, like
right,
in
right.
colleges.
I remember the first time I went to Mizzou in '08, I dropped out and I went, I was living in England for a little bit. The Black Student Union had an issue where somebody had just littered the whole entire um, field in front of the Black Student Union with cotton balls. And this would
Yeah.
have been like 2010.
Yeah. I'll tell you one thing, it happened again too.
Yeah.
Like when you left, it happened again. A
Yeah.
couple times actually.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, you know, that was a side of because I mean, I've obviously was never really into like frat culture. I went to a couple frat parties, but like,
Yeah.
you know, that was a side of the school I hadn't seen. I was young at the time. I didn't understand the
Yeah.
symbology behind it quite as much, but I think that kind of set me at least on a path for when I went back to Mizzou to be able to like recognize those things a little bit more and like realize like, oh,
Yeah.
we need to be listening to any of our students of color. We need to be listening to them when they're saying, hey, this is offensive to us. And I think
Yeah.
that's one thing is it's hard for a lot of people in positions of privilege to like step outside and
Yeah.
say like, hey,
Step
like,
outside that comfort zone, outside that
right.
bubble. Yeah.
One of the things that's like interesting to me is like looking like now that I'm getting into content creation a little bit more. I've got like 3 or 4 different projects going on at one time right now. Kind of like looking within the communities with content creation and seeing like even when you get up to like the big media, you know, like like
Mhm.
TV and Netflix and stuff, you know, there's all these like gestures that are just so like surface. There wasn't really any true change, but it's just enough for like white people to say like, oh, well, you
Just
have
for
this
everyone to be
now.
like, okay, simmer down, we've done something.
Right.
Yeah.
And, you know, and it's just enough to get like those assholes to be out there and be like, well, you guys already got this. Like,
Yeah. 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 It's
yeah.
funny. There's a meme going on right now where it's like, all right, well, hey, we're donating to Black Lives Matter. It's like, okay, cool. Can you stop police brutality? Hey, we're doing this. We're making Juneteenth a holiday. Okay, cool. Can you stop police brutality? Hey, we're gonna be doing this and doing that for Black people.
Hmm.
Dude, I mean, we appreciate hey, we're taking off all the statues and stuff like that.
Hmm.
No, we appreciate that, but all we really wanted was for you to stop police
Right.
brutality.
Right.
Like, can we get the thing that we actually really, really want?
And
Like,
even with that, like, and I'm guilty of this to a degree,
yeah,
is like a lot of people don't understand why taking down some of these statues is important. You know,
yeah,
like, you know, you have protests right now about the city of St. Louis about the fact that like King Louis was an anti-Semite. You know, he completely destroyed Jewish and Muslim like areas.
mhm,
I even came out and like I keep it on my Facebook because it's just like, yeah, no, like this is an example of growth. Is like, you know, I came out, I was just like, well, you know, this is the 13th century. There's not a lot we can like say about that, you know. But you know, some of my other Jewish friends who are like practicing Jews and were like really raised seeped in the culture have like come forward and been like, okay, well, at the same time, like this is something that can be seen as offensive. This is something that's like
yeah,
actually like not good.
yeah. But that's
And
the importance of like remembering your history,
mhm,
and having acknowledgement of the past. And I think
yeah.
that's where a lot of the divide begins,
Mhm,
when it comes to people of privilege. And when I say privilege, I don't mean just race. I mean just like
mhm,
people that are in a privilege that aren't offended by whatever is going on at the time.
right.
Like, it comes with the history of that word. Like, for example, like you hear the word freak, like when you're when you're referring to someone as a freak is something like that, and
Mhm,
you think it's complimentary or something like that, or it's not a big deal. But then you realize where you do the history about where it came from and how that word derived and how that was actually a word used in slavery for, what white masters would give to the women that they were, using as, their
mhm,
mistresses and stuff like that. And because of their shape, because of their curves and everything, they
yeah,
would, call them freaks and stuff like that. And it's just
yeah.
like,
And there is, you have, there is the clear delineation of like what is remembering history and
Mm-hmm.
and paying tribute to the past. I've seen people who are just like on the other side of this argument right now saying like, oh, in Germany and Poland they keep the concentration camps open, so we
Wow.
remember the history. And I'm like, well,
Yeah.
yes, but they don't have the statues of Hitler up.
We're not glorifying this.
And
Yeah.
I remember I was talking I was in a debate with somebody online recently. And I was like, my mom and I are Jewish, Russian, Romanian Jews. We went when we were in Germany, we were like, well, we have to visit a concentration camp. This was the first concentration camp that was in Weimar that we ended up going to.
Mm-hmm.
And they had like a list of the first Romanians to be killed in the Holocaust. And they had my great grandmother's last name, which
Wow.
means they were probably cousins. And
How'd
being
that
able
make
to
you
like,
feel?
kind of one of those things like you don't really know how to feel. You don't know these people; these are your ancestors, but at the same time, these are your ancestors.
Yeah.
Like you sit there and you're just like it's heavy. It's that heavy
Yeah.
feeling. The reason why that concentration camp that I went to was still there is so we can remember the atrocities, not
Yeah.
so we remember and idolize the people
Right.
committing them. Kind of change the subject a little bit because like, what are you doing now? Like, I'm always like trying to keep up with your jobs, like.
I find it very, very funny of what you, not necessarily what you're saying, but like
Yeah.
this your whole idea of what you're doing now when it comes to like having these discussions.
Yeah.
Because I literally just got had a meeting a few hours ago with a client. So I'm currently I produce people's videos for people's websites and stuff like that, and I edit as well.
Nice.
On top of producing my own films, and as you see, original content. So
yeah.
Sum it up, I'm a curator, producer, all around filmmaker, badass filmmaker.
I mean, you got to wear all those hats in the industry.
Yeah, but it's funny because with the client that I was working with, right? He works. His goal is he works with churches, right? Mm-hmm. Specifically, Baptist churches, Methodist churches, and just churches that are known for African Americans to go to and whatnot. And so his whole agenda is for his platform. He wants to, have these conversations, but he wants them to be voiced narrated by African Americans, people that are actually living through these situations, right? Yeah. And it's funny because I actually brought up to him, because there was a talk about diversity and inclusion, and I was like, hey, if you really want to be diverse, basically, from what is, because we've had meetings prior to this one that we had today, and I was like, in the meetings that we had prior to this, it sounded like you wanted inclusion of every race, every demographic, mm-hmm. right? But just to be led by a Black voice, which is understandable. Mm-hmm. But now it sounds like you just want Black on Black conversations, right? And that's great. And I was like, that's great. But just understand that hey, and this kind of goes to your thing of like, mm-hmm. Why some people of privilege don't understand. It's because they don't have a translator. You know what mm-hmm. I mean? I think like, for example, like, what you're doing right now, you're playing the role as a translator. Like, me, we have a good rapport and everything like that. We're having a discussion right now. And if you see a white male that, is trying to understand, would like to understand, or just says something where they're being ignorant and they don't mm-hmm. understand and they're not trying to understand, you are able as the translator to say, hey, actually, no, this is what's going on. Or, with me, what I'm saying right now, and there's someone else that's trying to understand, you like, okay, well, because of who you are, because of your race, because you guys may speak the same language and have the same type of upbringing or just cultural privileges, mm-hmm. it's easier for you to get the message across to them as it would be for me. It wouldn't be as easy for me to deliver that same message. Right. There's a disconnect. I just think that's pretty funny because sometimes I feel like in order for us to move anywhere, in order for us to end these things, there has to be an end to a disconnect. And I think the
Right.
problem with the world, not only America, but with the world, is we don't want to take the time, because it takes time
Yeah.
to connect things. We don't want to take the time to really focus on that disconnect, that misunderstanding. All we want are action, 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 results, results, results.
Mm-hmm.
While people are still feeling types of ways, while people are still being oppressed. And it's like, again, like, hey, yeah, we appreciate these companies putting on their websites, hey, Black Lives Matter, like, we appreciate it. But at the end of the day, the real disconnect right now is police brutality.
Yeah.
Like, so when we're saying things like, hey, defund the police, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, wait, no, that means, police stations won't be open. No, we're saying take some of the money that you're putting into, police training and stuff like that, because clearly you're not doing a good job at it.
Mm-hmm.
Put some of that into, reforming,
Yeah.
whether it be prison reform or police reforming, or anything that benefits minorities, those communities that are constantly being bullied by systems of authority.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, like, and I know in St. Louis, my mom has gotten really involved in a couple different organizations there. One of them is, I believe it's called like End the Pipeline, which their whole thing is making sure that there's a way for open access to education and open access to after school programs and things that help keep kids off the street, help kids who are in these schools and in these generally lower income areas, which of course are disproportionately Black. Making sure that they have these outlets and like these proper programs around them, which as a white kid from the county, like, I had access to. My mom, usually had to apply for some kind of scholarship for it because we didn't have a lot of money, but because of where we lived, the scholarships were readily available. And we had a very close-knit neighborhood.
It makes a hell of a difference, man.
It does. The cops knew all of us. If one of us got in trouble, everybody heard about it, and the cops knew us through Dare, which is ineffective as it is, but like through coming into the school with Dare, through coming in. One of the cops who eventually became like captain of the I think he might have eventually become the chief of police, lived 2 blocks away from me. Knew me by name. I went to school with his nephew. Like, it was one of those things. Whereas, especially in the city, like, it's harder to have that kind of relationship with the police. And there are also just aren't the social programs to make sure that kids are staying out of trouble because they're not funded, because all the money's going to giving cops weapons and riot gear.
Exactly. And that's, and again, so fund these after school programs, fund these things to keep kids out of trouble. Fund, after school sporting events, stuff like that. Like, all the, how like every time there's the chess club or some shit like that, or like, an after school program that needs money, but the school's like, oh, we don't have any, right?
Yeah.
And now they're forced to do like, some types of fundraising events to raise money and stuff like that. And communities that might not have the funds to do that, right?
Right.
And it's like, okay, we'll take a little bit of funds out of all that to rebuild the community. All these little things, these after school programs, these networking events, these career fairs, all these things are bringing back into rebuilding the community. One thing that hit me the other day, it was what Netflix did, and I was like, see, this is an example of where we should be going.
Right.
About how they recently 2% of their profits they're going to be putting into Black banks. It was a bank, I think it's called New Hope Bank, and it's a Black-owned bank.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, there we go. And granted, it's one thing to put in the money, which is great. Yeah, you're giving your money. It would be better if it would be more so loans. That way, these Black banks are building interest and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because if you're just depositing your money and you want that money back for whatever reason, those banks are going to have to give you that money, and if they don't have it, it might be a problem.
Yeah.
However, at least it's a foot in the right direction. Right. At least it's setting the idea and setting the precedent of, okay, this is some shit that we really need. Forget, like, I mean, like, not forget. You can, of course, continue to have the we stand by, you know, Black Lives Matter. You can, of course, have these acknowledge the privileges and everything, but put your money where it counts.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. And that's one of the things that, like, I feel like so many communities are feeling right now, because even with the LGBTQ community, every June, every company comes out with rainbow stuff for Pride.
Yeah.
Every damn company, you know.
Yeah.
My work is littered with "Love is Universal" merchandise everywhere. But then when you look at where they're putting their money at, the CEOs and the board members, who they're giving their money to, what kind of politicians they're giving their money to.
Yeah.
Usually it's groups and politicians and things like that who have a very firm anti-LGBTQ stance. It's like frustrating for me as somebody to witness it, and like it's so much worse for those communities, because like they're being manipulated.
Exactly.
And many times they don't even realize it.
Exactly. It's and that's the thing, like, and that's why that is one of the benefits of what's going on right now when it comes to these protests, is just due to the fact of, you know, people are seeing past the glitz and glamour now.
Right.
You know, a few years ago when something like this would happen, you know, of course, yeah, it would be the marches. You know, we'd have white allies or, you know, allies of other races that would, you know, be a part of the marches. It was small, but they were out there. We would have, you know, companies make a statement, you know, and just leave it at that. And people would be like, okay, they made a statement. They don't stand by this, and that means they're one of the good guys, but they're still giving all their money to the bad guys. They're still they're profiting off of our oppression at the end of the day. And now you have people, you know, thankfully, you know, not just, you know, allies, but especially African Americans that are saying, yeah, we hear what you're saying, but what are you really doing? Everyone is glued to see, what are you doing? And that's why you see all these companies now donating proceeds to, you know, Black Lives Matter movement. And it's like, all right, cool. We appreciate that, but we're going to double check. We're gonna make sure, like, that's actually what you're doing, and if you're not doing that, we're gonna expose you.
Yeah, well, and it was kind of like, one of the things that gets me about the donating is people aren't not necessarily, and you mentioned this earlier, like people not necessarily doing their research on it. Several celebrities were giving a ton of money, like millions of dollars, to a group just called Black Lives Matters that ended up being based out of California. And that group doesn't support a lot of the things that the current movement is looking at. Like, you know, one of the things I did want to ask about, because, like, you know, growing up in Missouri and like really being in that, like, you know, kind of like intense racism that we saw there, and like then going to somewhere like Portland, where it's seen as like a leftist hub. Like a lot of people think Portland and they think, oh wow, like liberals and hippies and like you know, like but I know Portland specifically has had issues with, you know, like people like even like with like Nazi symbols and stuff on them, like kind of coming out of the woodworks over the past like 4 years. Wonder why. One of the things that I found growing up in like the Unitarian Universalist Church, where we're very progressive and welcoming, is that this tokenization that happens with white liberals and white leftists and even like libertarians who are socially more liberal. Like, did you experience a lot of that in Portland? Because I know like I had friends who would go to Portland and be like, yeah, you know, it's so white, they don't understand that while their intentions are good, that like they're kind of going about it the wrong way.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah, bro. It was one of those things where, yeah, you go somewhere that's just blatantly racist. You go from a place that's blatantly racist and just like upfront in your face about it, and then you go to a place that is, you know, where they're like, oh, what's racism? I don't know what that is, you know. But
I don't see like, color.
I don't see. You get that. You go to a place, you get that.
And they don't understand why that's racist.
That's what you get. You get that. You get a lot of that. But then, you know, so it's like a mix, right? So it's just like, it's like racism in a different way, because it's there, right? um it's just less blatant,
Mm-hmm.
but it's there in like the ways that it's there in a lot of backhanded ways,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like where it's like oh God, I can give you some examples. Just like, for example, so the first job I had when I was out there, the guy, this is the owner of the
Mm-hmm.
job, owner of the job.
Mm-hmm.
He sees me. He's like, hi to everybody else. He sees me. He says, now watch me whip, watch me nay nay. And I'm like,
Oh my god.
and I was like, first off, I don't even know how to do that.
Right. Like I'm
It's
not
like, I don't know.
16. Like
I'm not all right. I'm like, I'm 23 years old. I'm a grown ass man. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's my nephew, Steve's. Like, so, and second off, why didn't you do that to everyone? Like, what the fuck? Like, you know what I'm
mm-hmm.
saying? Like, and but then you of course you get the looks, right? You get a lot of looks of, like, I remember one time I was on a plane, first class, mind you. Oh,
Mm-hmm.
this is a perfect example actually of racism in Portland, and just the beauty of how subtle it is.
Yeah.
Because they do it in the big ways, but in a quiet way. So this is with a job that I was working with. I was a producer,
Mm-hmm.
and well, at the time I was a production assistant, and I was working with producers, but I was like on my way up to become a official producer, right? Mm-hmm. So we're dealing with a client that's actually known for being pretty racist and sexist.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say their company, but like I'll just say it's a bunch of Germans, and there's it is what it is, but yeah, they're known for it, and that's kind of their culture, but we keep them on board because they pay us, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they have an event going on. They want me to help produce the event. I'm like, cool. Well, I don't want to just go there to the event if there are meetings taking place, and you guys want me to be a key factor in this production of it. Mm-hmm. Then I need to be at those meetings too, right?
Right.
Mind you, these meetings are filled with a whole bunch of white people. I'd be the only black person there, right? Mm-hmm. And I was told by the producer of I was told by the head producer, like, yeah, you know what? We should be able to get you in there. That's no problem. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. They have a staff meeting, comes back to me. He's like, hey, so you won't be able to come to the meeting.
Wow.
I'm like, I said, first off, I was like, why?
Yeah.
Like what good reason? I'm a part of the team. This is a production meeting. I'm a producer. You know what I'm saying? Like, even though I'm a production assistant, I'm still a producer. Like, I'm assisting you. I need to know these things and stuff like that. Like, you want me to be your right-hand person. Like, if this was any other organization, I would be a part of this meeting because I have other clients, and so why? He's like, it's just we were going over, head stuff, and it's just. And I was like, but these things are going to be related to me anyway. Yeah. I should be meeting with these clients. I'm going to be meeting these clients anyway, so why don't I just meet them now while everyone else on the team, mind you, is meeting them? Yeah. Sorry, we ain't got nothing, John. I'm sorry. You can go down. You can meet us on Saturday in Seattle with the truckers. Basically, they wanted me to leave Portland to go with. They wanted me to drive down to Seattle in a truck while all of the producers are taking a flight with the clients. Yeah. And I was like, no, I'm taking a flight. And I just told him straight up, because I recognized exactly what that was. Yeah. And I'm not saying it was his call, but he just, because he like the guy that was telling me is a good guy, we're cool. But at the same time, you're also a part of that problem when you don't stand up and blatantly say, that's fucked up. No, he actually deserves to be in this meeting. Right. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, so for me, I was like, no, I'm taking a flight like everyone else. Mm-hmm. And since I wasn't paying for it, I bumped that bitch first class. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And mind you, and to continue that, when I got on that flight, right? It's first class. It's a red eye. This is another part of the I wouldn't say this is blatant racism, but this is the manipulation. This is the prejudiceness that comes with it. I'm sitting in first class. It's like 6 a.m. in the morning. So like I have on like sweats and a hoodie, you know, just really chilling, right? There's this Asian woman that is staring a hole into me like, what is he doing sitting here type thing, right?
Yeah.
And every time I turn and look at her, she's like, and then she starts smiling, like, oh hi, you know, but she cannot get her eyes off of me. And then there's the flight, the stewardess, right? He's a black male. And this is something I noticed a lot in Portland, actually. He was a black male, and like, you know, he's talking to all of the people in first class. And then when he gets to me, he's like, first he wants to make sure I'm in the right seat. Yes, I'm in the right seat.
Yeah.
Then it's like, then he asked, like, you know, oh, are you here for a family visit or something like that? Like, you know, and I was like, what? Because I'm in sweats, like I'm not here for business like everyone else,
right?
You know, and I was like, no, I'm actually here for business. And I think honestly, when it comes to that, when I say I've seen a lot of that on like just like black people as well, is because in Portland, there's so many white people, and then after white people, it's Hispanic people, and then after Hispanic people, it's Asians, and finding someone that looks like me is like literally Where's Waldo in Portland. So like to see someone that is actually in the same room as these other races is like kind of weird, unheard of, and very rare, to the point where it's like, okay, especially someone, mind you, that looks like me, not just like some, like, you know, like colorism plays an effect too. I'm not like some clean shaven, light skinned dude, you know what I'm saying? Like that looks like biracial. Like you can tell I'm black as hell. I'm a Nigerian dude, you know? So it's like, you know, so finding someone that looks like me, that dresses like me, it's like, and that's not a rapper or an athlete. It's like, okay, well, how did he get in here? You know? So
and you know, it definitely says something to like that, like internalized like racism. Every white person on the face of the planet I know, when the George Floyd protest started sharing that damn Candace Owens video. And like, you know, I had to explain to some of my friends who I know are pretty open-minded, but are like, oh yeah, well, you know, and she didn't use any real statistics in her video, didn't use anything like that. Just her opinion as somebody who is a wealthy, privileged black woman, like who has become like the go-to like alt-right talking point. Like,
and they go to her to feel better, you know, because it's a black person saying this shit.
Having to explain internalized racism to some of my friends, like going to the school I go to and being in the music department and stuff like that, like these kids aren't stupid, like, you know, but you know, a lot of them can easily be misled because a lot of them are wealthier. A lot of them haven't had to experience these things, and to be able to say like, okay, well, I get you grew up in a rich white neighborhood, and while your family's pretty progressive, like you've never had to experience somebody who has, you know, internalized racism. Like you haven't had to experience that kind of thing. And whereas like, you know, I mean, think about, I think it was
got to my stories on St. Louis
but I mean, I like think about like when we were in college and the whole like the first Bill Cosby scandal came out because he was saying like, oh well, it's, you know, started like pinning things on the black community about like, oh, we need to behave better, and pretty much saying like, well, we just need to conform to white culture. You know, it was pretty much what he was saying. And like,
same thing OJ said.
And that's the thing, is like people, like white people just don't seem to understand like that is a form of internalized racism and training that like
that is what we call cooning over here.
Trying to explain that to people is difficult.
And hell, even when I was there, I lived with someone that was racist for like a month. You know, that was a very interesting dynamic, just because living with that person, I was able to see, like, I was able to kind of really dissect him and see, okay,
instead of like, you know, trying to go at war with this guy, you know, let me really try to understand where this comes from, you know, because he had, like, again, this guy was racist, like, and he was open with it, you know, and it was like, I and what I gathered was it all comes down to self-hate. Like, he had a lot of hate in himself. He had a lot of like anger in himself. He had a lot of just like issues with insecurities. He was infested with insecurities in himself. Yeah. That you know that would fester. And we live in a society, especially when it comes to white people, where no one wants to take the blame. No one wants to take accountability. Everyone wants to blame somebody, right? And it's just like, for him, his go-to was black people. His go-to was like, you know, just saying like we did some shit to him. It's like, dude, we didn't do nothing to you. And then he's like, oh, there was one time I got jumped in Chicago. And I'm like, you know, dude, people get jumped in Chicago all the fucking time. And you've been racist for a minute, you know? So, and just kind of understand in his view on things. Like, this was, mind you, the height of the birth of the Black Lives Matter was going on around this time. And he was definitely one of those guys saying, all lives matter, all lives matter. And it's like, you don't get it, and you're not trying to get it. And I think that's where, you know, people like you come in hand and are necessary, because it's like, you're trying to make that connection. You're trying to, even though I have, and I told him, I was like, dude, I'm not going to be that person that you say, I'm not going to be the black friend. Like, oh, my friend is black, so I'm gonna let the whole world know, no, you're a fucking racist, dude. Yeah. Like, you know, and I appreciate you for being basically just like, I feel that I'm not racist. I do have, you know, friends of, you know, color and different cultures. However, I am aware that, you know, I have privileges, and if I don't do anything to help others, then I am also a part of the problem.
Right. Like, it's interesting you bring that up, because like, I think a lot, you know, obviously, like, a lot of white people have black friends, like at least one, you know, and like that, you know, and that's why it, especially among like white people who are activists, the whole like, I mean, I have a black friend has kind of become like a trope that we make fun of like all the time, like, and it's just kind of something that people like, okay, well, you can have a black friend and you know, that's great, but like, you know, I had several in elementary school and stuff like that, but I had already internalized certain racist ideas because my bully in elementary school happened to be black. And, well, one of them. There was also a whole white family that bullied me all the time. But to me, like, by the time I was in high school, I was feeding into that, like, societal stereotype of, oh, well, black men are more violent or whatever. And I remember being at Anytown, and I said that we had the big phrase of the week was own your shit. You know, that was the big phrase of the week, where like, if you found something within you that was racist, sexist, whatever, rather than make an excuse for it, just own it. Realize like, this is something that's a part of me, and it's something that needs to change. You know, it was kind of interesting because everybody's being opened up to something new, no matter what their race, sexuality, gender, like whatever, was being opened up to something new. So everybody had their own shit to unpack. And like, so like one night, this just kind of comes out of me, and like everybody, like it was the first time, like it was a week-long thing. I think we were on like day 3 or 4, and it was the first time like I had realized like I had this internalized thing in me. And I think, and I started trying to make excuses, and everyone would just cut me off like, Phil, own your shit. And like, nobody wants to be the bad guy. And especially
everyone wants to be liked.
Right. And
those are sometimes, to be honest though, like that's one, not to cut you off, but just to add what you're saying, sometimes those are the worst type of people. Like, you know, those are the people that I trust the least. The person that, you know, wants to be liked by everyone. Right. Maybe that's someone that can't be trusted. And you know, to go with like how you're feeling, you know, you were bullied at a stage and everything. It came from pain, but at the end of the day, you know, like that kid that did it, it's not a black thing. It's just a youth thing.
Just an asshole.
You know, like regardless of the of the race or the gender, when you're, you know, like a kid or a teenager, you're gonna be a fucking asshole. You're gonna be a really big, like, for real, you're gonna be a jerk.
Yeah. And like, especially like this kid, like when we know his home life wasn't good. We know, you know, there
Yeah.
were so many factors like
Yeah. And that's the thing though. Like there's layers to all of this. And that's one of the key things that, you know, everyone needs to understand. But again, that's one of those key things that takes so much time to understand for other people. And the problem is, like, you know, like groups of people do not want to make that time. You know,
especially
like
in the social
it's
media
like,
era,
you know,
man.
it's so evident. Yeah. It's so evident though. It's like where, you know, at the end of the day, like racism, I feel like is just like a tag to, you know, like to basically put on something that is just at the end of the day wrong, but it's only affecting one race, right? Like, I think that's where, like, you know, why we have so many people that are standing up right now, because at the end of the day, having your knee on someone's neck while they are handcuffed and cannot move, and they are saying I cannot breathe, and you are not getting off of them regardless of the race, that is wrong. That is wrong, and that is unprofessional. What makes it racist is the fact that this has happened so many times,
right,
to a specific race,
yeah,
to people that I know. I was just talking to my brother yesterday or a couple of days ago, and he was telling me how that same thing happened to him, you know?
Yeah, wow.
And it's just like, you know, like and that's the thing, like now it's just getting caught on camera. It's things like your truth when you were a teenager of, you know, hey, I think black women are more are violent, you know, are more violent than others. And the fact is like, you know, we get these narratives, and that's what puts us in danger. You know, I was actually reading a post from this woman that was acknowledging her privilege, and it was beautiful. She was basically talking about all the times she got in trouble with the law as a teenager and as a young adult as well. And she did some fucked up things, and every single time she never got arrested. Like every single time it was like officers, and these are officers from different communities. It's not like they all knew her. It's like, you know, like whether it was shoplifting, whether it was fighting, you know, things like that. Like these officers would be like, oh no, you know, like just, you know, they would talk to her or give her a warning or something like that, right? But, you know, someone of my complexion, we don't get a lot of those same privileges. Instantly, it's hand on the trigger. Yeah. You know, like hand on the gun, and then we'll talk after that. One of the things that's going on in the Black community right now that has been becoming more acknowledged and more aware is like PTSD that Black people go through because of that, because we don't get the opportunity to just have a conversation. We don't get the opportunity to express our pains. And Black people aren't known for having therapists in the hood. You know what I'm saying? Like we don't we don't get that. Now you see the youth now, a lot of their therapy is like drugs and shit like that.
Yeah. It's so interesting to me, like the fact that you brought up like your brother and like this woman. You know, you see the same cases in when it comes to conversations like within the Me Too movement, where every woman has a story of attempted rape or a friend who's been raped. Yeah. Every Black person that I know, or even, you know, Black person and even Hispanics, like every single one of them has a story of they were just minding their business or doing something small or committed some petty crime that like stupid teenagers commit, landed them or loved one in jail, or had a life and death situation like you see with George Floyd and even like your brother, like that's a life and death situation, having a knee on so many of those situations. And every white person I know has a story of just a time where they did something stupid and a cop was just like, hey, you, stop causing mischief, you know. And like I know every freaking frat boy on the face of the planet has some drug-addled story that the cops just brushed off.
But they got their parents to bail them out of the situation real quick.
My cousin started dating a guy at one point who, and this was around the time of, I want to say it was around the time of like Mike Brown. He would tell us stories about how, oh yeah, when I was underage, I was working for this guy for the summer, and we would have beers in the back of his truck or whatever, you know, things like that. You know, something clearly illegal, drinking underage, right? Like something that like every college student does. But he would tell us these stories. And then as soon as the Mike Brown thing hit, he would start saying like, oh, well, if you don't commit a crime, you don't have to worry. And I'm like, dude, you've literally told us stories of you committing a crime.
Exactly.
Like, you've literally told us these stories. I can tell you 100 stories of friends who shoplifted and they got a stern talking to and turned around and walked back to the Target. Like, you know, and like that's the thing, is that people don't realize like those little things are like, that is what the privilege is.
They don't get the benefit of the doubt.
Right, like they don't experience it themselves, so therefore they just don't think it exists. I think social media is a help and a hindrance, because like with social media, we're seeing this now. More people are backing the Black Lives Matter movement now than they were back during Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown. Like we had like at least one of these a year that had gotten this major...
What was the guy's name? That got shot while he was just watching TV in his apartment. I forgot his name. God.
Yeah.
So like I was talking to my sister a few months ago, because like she was like, one day I was just in her apartment and I didn't like instantly lock the door. And she was like really pissed at me about it. And I was like, I'm right here. Like, what's the issue and everything? Like, you know, no one's just going to come in here. And she's like, no, wrong, motherfucker. Like, people will come in and just like randomly shoot you.
Yeah. You know, and that's the one case in the last decade where, you know, the murderer got sent to prison. But even then, she got a slap on the wrist sentence.
Slap on the wrist sentence and a hug from the judge.
Personally, like one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you is because you have been doing like a lot of this like creator and stuff for so long. Like, what do you think, like kind of like already mentioned it a little bit, like what do you think that, especially like now that I'm getting more into content creation, what do you think is important? Like, what kind of conversations do you think it is important to have, as you know? And like I'm interested in this as like somebody who's just getting into doing like sketch comedy and vlogs. Like, you know, I've been doing music for the past 3 or 4 years, but like I'm just now getting into that world where like I could potentially do something really awful and not even realize it until it's too late. What do you think is important, not just for like the content I'm creating, but what do you think is important to make a more welcoming space? How can we make it a like safer and more open space for everybody?
I mean, I think that it involves, it goes into the whatever you're choosing to create. So my first thing is it has to be something you stand by. First and foremost, right? It has to be something, and regardless of what it is, whether it's a blog, podcast, song, whatever, you have to be able to stand by it, right? And you definitely, it's extremely vital to know, hey, you're not gonna win everyone over. Not everyone's gonna be on your side. Not everyone's gonna like this video. Not everyone's gonna view it. Doesn't matter. Why did you do it? What is your message that you're trying to get across? What is the message? And do you stand by that message? You don't have to always stand by that message because people change. But in this time, in this moment, when you are delivering that message, do you stand by it? You know, I think with me, when it comes to Basher Chronicles, you know, it's a lot of nostalgia, right? Of like clips that I make with Basher Chronicles and everything. And, you know, sometimes it'll be messages that I no longer like fully stand by, but at the time I did, and I'll probably emphasize that. Like I remember there was this one video that I made that, you know, it was called Drunk, Bothered, and Bitter, right? And I was just going off. But I made sure to put, before the video even played, because it was entertaining, like I got a lot of feedback, but I made sure to put before it even aired, hey, this was taken in 2015 on a drunken night when I, you know, and blah blah blah. I don't feel this way anymore. If it doesn't apply, let it fly, you know, and then just played it, you know. But yeah, you have to. I feel like it's important to just be real. It's only gonna work if you're real. It's only gonna work if you stand by it, and usually you're gonna stand by what's real to you. And then from there, if you're trying to get people to be a part of it, you know, it's literally just do what you just do what you did here. But you know, but before trying to get other people to be a part of it, you got to show that you're going to do it with or without them. Yeah, I think that's extremely vital. Of just like, you know, my you know, for Basher Visuals, my slogan is we wait for no one. One of the mottos is we wait for no one. So, and that was where kind of Bachelor Chronicles came out, where, I was like, okay, I don't have like a high-tech video camera or anything like that, but I do have this iPhone. Let me just start. And I do have a plethora of videos and shit like that. But you got to show people, hey, I'm going to do this with or without you. Yeah. But, it would be cool if you, would be down to be with it.
My biggest thing is like, I feel like there's almost a disconnect in a way, because like, especially with Deceptive Productions, the group I just started, it's really important to like film stuff and write stuff about what you know in your life. And like, there is that part of me where I'm just like, man, there's so much going on in the world right now. And like, we're a comedy channel, like first and foremost. Like we make like stupid nerdy comedy.
Yep. I like
yeah.
Where you're going. Go ahead.
Yeah, like we make stupid we just posted a video today where we're like quarantined, but we're like making our own little Disney World in my friend's house. Like, and it's stupid. And like I literally, we filmed it back in March. It was supposed to be part of a bigger sketch. Comedy is one of those things that is really important to a movement in a way. Part of what I'm always thinking about, especially right now, because it was, especially after George Floyd, like we took like a month off of doing anything, because like we're just, I'm just like, I can't just go out and do our same stupid like videos and vlogs.
100%. Yeah.
And I waited a while because I was trying to collect my words and my thoughts and everything. And I finally posted a video last week, like an update, like, yo, we've been gone. Like it was one of those things I'm like, comedy is essential though. Like, first off, you got to learn to like, even if the world is burning down around you, like you have to be able
about it.
Yeah, you got to learn to laugh. What do you think is like that line that some of the content creators tend to cross between like, that might be like, oh, well, that was well-meaning, but man, that crossed a line.
So I'm really glad that you said that, because that's something I would love to add to. So as a content creator, I have went through that own thing. Like, for example, episode 9 of Bachelor Chronicles, I've just been kind of sitting on, because I haven't really it's not about what's going on today. It's what's going on personally with me in my life of just like, being a filmmaker. And, and so it's like, okay, do I really want to put this out when there's so much going on? I'll tell you, just as a viewer, I've been really eyeing, especially comedians, I've been eyeing their content, because like, for example, like on Blackout Tuesday, that was something I really paid attention to, of who did it, like who did it, and if they didn't do it, like what have they done to speak on this, to speak on what's going on? Because the whole message of this movement is, hey, the fun and games are over right now. The entertainment is over. We got to pause some shit right now.
How they did it was important too, because it was one thing to just put the black square on all your social media and then not use your platform to like amplify black voices. If you're not using it to amplify black voices, then there was no point in putting the black square, and all you did was mute people. Right.
They didn't know why they were just going on with the trend. So another example of that is going with that. I think it was like the CEO or some shit, the founder of Barstools, right? Yeah. So he spoke out about it, and he was like, hey, we're gonna keep putting out content. I don't think we should, be blacking out social media and stuff like that. And he was just basically saying his whole opinion about this shit. And it was one of those things where it was like, I think it's very vital to, if you don't really know, if you're not talking to the source of why this is happening, don't fucking say anything. Shut the fuck up. And he has influence, because I'm seeing this from some guy's story, some guy that like clearly doesn't like, who doesn't understand, black culture and shit like that. And he's like, oh yeah, I kind of agree with what he's saying and stuff like that. And it's like, neither one of you guys see the fucking point. But look at who you're looking at to get information. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at who you're going to, the fucking guy from Barstool. And so, like, it's like, before you start putting your opinion out there for the world to hear, how about you ask people, how about you have these type of discussions to people, with people that are in that world, that are being affected, that are making these posts, like, you know what I'm saying? Like me, again, my content is like really based off of, like, you know, just whatever I'm feeling at the time. My content is pretty based on my life and just things that I care about. Like, you know, when I posted a month of Black history and, you know, a month of women and shit like that, and that wasn't for like, that was just something that I care about. But now it's like, you know, when I posted things about, you know, quarantine combos, it's like, okay, we can't ignore what's going on right now, you know? And then when with things that are going on right now, you know, I made videos about that. It's like, you know, would I want to make videos about this all the time? Hell no, because it puts me in it marginalizes me, right? It creates a niche audience that I have to cater to all the time. No, I wouldn't want to be known for being this person. However, I do 100% understand, respect, and I respect what is going on right now. The fact that we need to pause all the funny shit. You know what I'm saying? And not only that do I understand it, but I want to be a part of the solution. I feel like Dave Chappelle was a great example of how you can do both.
Oh yeah,
you know,
that was incredible.
With his stand-up, but yeah, you know, with his stand-up of like, okay, we're gonna talk about this, we're gonna make some jokes here and there, but this is some serious shit. Like, no one should be laughing about this shit right now. And one person that I did see make a joke, and it was funny because it wasn't about what happened. It was about you know, the reactions. Like, and it was this white girl. I'll send you the video on IG later. But she was basically making a joke like, oh my God, somebody call the police. There's a fire going on. There's a fire at this house. This house is burning. And then this woman, she was acting like a white woman. She's like, well, what about my house? Yeah. Is your house on fire? No, but you know, it could be. Like, my house matters. No one said that it didn't matter, but this house is on fire right now. You know, so she's explaining the ignorance of like Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter and shit like that, right? Yeah. And it was funny because it's like, okay, now, so that let's make jokes about that, right? But let's not step foot and try to make jokes about some real shit, about like, you know, murders that are actually happening. That, while that's funny for you, and I'll leave it at this. It's funny for the person that's not involved in it, that's not next to it. Just like seeing gangster rap and shit like that is entertaining for those kids that grow up in the suburbs and they go to the Coachellas and they love to see that shit because they're not next to it. But people are actually in that shit. That's not just some made up shit. People are actually in that world. Yeah. And so they're the ones that are laughing, and you're making fun of their real life day-to-day situations. Yeah. So
another thing as like a white suburban kid was, you know, I would listen to rap music and I was never into gangster rap. The media, you know, like the news, especially in the early 2000s, like the news was always saying like, oh, they're glorifying this stuff. They're glorifying this stuff. You know, as I get older, like, and I like would listen to it and like really kind of start to understand, it's like, they're not glorifying it. They're saying this is what's happening.
This it is.
Right. And I think that was really like kind of eye-opening to me.
It goes back to that bully. It goes back to your bully experience of like, oh no, they're just teenagers, but no, like you gathered from that. No, Black people are more violent. Like no.
Like as a creator, like I want to sit here and I want to like make statements. I mean, when this all blew up, I shared one of the songs that my band made on our CD, where like I had written the whole second verse about the protests, the Jason Stockley verdict protests that were going on at the time. I shared that with everybody, like, man, this is the same stuff that was going on 3 or 4 years ago when my band released this song. And you know, it's one of those things like, well, now I'm delving into this new world. Like, how do I do this without trying to seem like, oh, hey, I'm just like cheesing for the camera and like being another one of those like white social media influencers who are trying to be like, oh yeah, BLM, here's a photo of me at the beach, like, you know.
Or here's a photo of me. Here's a photo of me with I'm taking a screwdriver. I'm taking a machine driver from someone that's actually doing construction, acting like it's mine and acting like I'm really actually doing something
Right.
to like repair the buildings that were broken into and shit like that.
Exactly.
Like,
Yeah,
okay.
and you know, it's one of those things like, and I think that is where kind of like
a drill.
but yeah, yeah, right. Like I think it's one of those things where like I think as a white creator, like I need to be conscious of that. And you know, you don't want to have like a PewDiePie situation where like making comments about
He
you.
just got caught up in some shit, huh? Right? Like,
yeah. What we are finding through these protests going international is like this isn't just our community, like this isn't just our country, this is an issue all over the world that needs to be like dealt with and like helped. And I think, you know, I always think like comedy has and content and art has, we have the biggest voice, man, like because like we reach people on a different level, you know.
Facts.
And like it is just that matter of like how, you know, how do you make it inviting, how do you make it, you know, so your message is like heard. And like I think that's gonna be, you know, obviously like we can't like sit here and figure that out like right away.
But you're doing a good job, man. You're doing a good job just having these discussions right here with people that are in these worlds. If you want to make content that is about, you know, like the things that are going on today, which are obviously impacting Black communities and whatnot, then it's good that you are talking to actual Black people that are from these communities. You know, and hearing their opinion, hearing their voices. That way, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, yeah, you're being comedic, you're speaking your truth and everything, but you know, you're not being just an idiot. You know, you're like, they're like, no one's asking you to, you know, I know as a comedian, no one is asking you to apologize for what you make, right? But they're just asking, what we really want is for comedians to be aware of what they're doing.
And I think that's key. And that is so key. That difference, the fine line, but like,
don't be sorry, be careful, just be aware of what you're joking with. And that's what's gonna separate like, you know, that's what's gonna separate people laughing at your joke or your joke getting lost. You know, like and the last thing you want is your joke to get lost, because if it gets lost, you're gonna not only lose a lot of viewership, but you're also gonna lose a lot of respect, and that's gonna lose you a lot of money.
Yeah, you know? And I think, you know, it always goes back, the one argument that is always made is like, oh, what about Robert Downey Jr. in Tropic Thunder? Every single time, you know, everybody talks about Robert, and like, they don't understand, like, that was a statement on Hollywood and how far Hollywood, especially at the time, would go to avoid casting a Black lead. And like, you know, there's a reason why, like, it's only those like Portland style white people where they're like, oh, we're liberal and open-minded, oh, Robert Downey Jr. shouldn't have done that, who are really like attacking this. And then like most of my Black friends are like, no, we get the joke, we completely
I didn't give a fuck about, like, I laughed at the end when he took off the shit and everything, took off the fro and stuff.
It was a hilarious part. It was well written, and the point it was getting across was there. And like,
it's, and that's the thing. Like we are definitely in a position right now where it's sides of people that are just instantly triggered, and then people that are like instantly open to understand what's going on. Right? They're open for discussion. They're open to see, okay, what is the point of it? What's going on? But, you know, you gotta, you know, again, just depends on the content that you're creating of, all right, do I want to be with what I'm doing right now, what kind of conversation is this going to bring? Is it going to bring more understanding more than piss people off, or is it going to piss people off more than bring understanding?
Right.
This year, it's definitely been about showing it true colors, you know, and just like, you know, everyone's MO, everyone's agenda. So like for example, with Netflix, with what they did, I'm still going to be observing because I really want to know. I want names of who was involved. Like I heard from the CFO, but I want to know about these black banks as well, like who was involved in that, because right now I'm really trying to understand, okay, what is your intention? I've always been a man of like, you know, don't do shit for me if it's not genuine, right?
Right.
Like, and so right now you have people that are, you know, when it comes to, and this is why I say, you know, just be real with what you do with your content. You have people that are doing things just because it's trendy, and, you know, versus people that are doing things because it's how they really feel.
Yeah.
And, you know, when it comes to businesses and stuff like that, we're all like, now, especially since money is so tight, people are being very cautious about who they give their money to, which is why you all these businesses catering to like what's going on right now. But yeah, you check the history. Are you going to half-ass something, or is it just about the money to you, or is it about the message? What's the most important thing?
Yeah,
that's what I'm like caring about the most right now.
And I forget who it was. I was watching one the other day, and they were like, you know, I think what this pandemic has done, because we have so much time to sit and be on our own, is it's brought forward what's most important. So there's three of us in the apartment, and even with the three of us, where we can keep each other company all day, you still have to sit with your own thoughts more, and you still have to. Yeah, and you know, and I think Trevor Noah was even putting it best when the George Floyd stuff, you know, the statement he released, like that amazing like 20-minute video, where he was kind of talking over everything that has happened over the last month up to George Floyd, and the earlier protests, where he was just like, this is all over the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. And, you know, Amy Cooper, Chris Cooper was over this backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. Breonna Taylor, especially with that case where you have somebody who's a first responder, who's an EMT, who's out there trying to help, and like is on the front lines of this, is the exact type of person that the alt-right and well, everybody alt-right, far
the one
left,
that's supposed to be the hero,
right? Like we're sitting here celebrating her work, but then don't respect her as a person enough to do anything. And like, that's, you know, I think that's what's amplifying it, this, you know, and we're seeing that now. We're seeing that.
Heavy.
Yeah.
By the way. Heavy.
Yeah.
And we just need to see more, man. And that's, you know, again, why I appreciate what you're doing and everything. You know, it's all about, you know, being that change and being consistent. You know, as long as you're consistent with your content, and, you know, you're consistent with the need for change, you know, it's definitely bound to come sooner than later.
And I think it's really important too, like, why I wanted to get like your experiences. What happens on the screen is like a third of what your reality is. Yeah. You know, like, you could be the biggest YouTuber in the world and just happen to be black and be wealthy from whatever you're doing, and because you speak out,
you get cut off, you get canceled.
Yeah, well, and not just that, but like, people are like, oh, well, man, you're wealthy, why are you complaining? Like, and it's like, yeah, like, we know
with Kaepernick.
Yeah, exactly. And we see that, and
now everyone's saying, oh, Kaepernick, I get it now.
Yeah. And because we actually have time to sit and like look. We're not catching little snippets of like blurbs from news broadcasts. Like, we're sitting here, we have nothing better to do than be on the internet and be, you know, and we're getting minute by minute updates on what every politician's doing, every business person's doing, whatever, everybody. Like, we're getting everything right now.
Exactly.
It's like, content creators usually put out the best part of their lives. Yeah. And when they put out anything, and when they put out saying something like anything else, oh, it's the cat.
It throws people off.
It was Shannon again. It was the cat. But, you know, yeah, it throws people off, and they, you know, and it's just kind of like, because they don't see what you had. Last week, was it Jay Farrow from who used to be on SNL had a run in with a cop, and we see that now. But like, I feel like if this was any other time in our history, we wouldn't have that wouldn't have made the news. Somebody who's a star like him can still get treated like this, and this is the side we're not seeing. We don't usually see, and I think that's incredible. Like,
don't
right
forget that's what it is. Like, hey, don't forget. Just a quick reminder, you're black. You know, don't forget it. At the end of the day, you know.
Yeah, and like I would see people post about like, oh well, like I was in the Marines and I was in the cops and we had like black people and we all had each other's back, and it's like, yeah, but when they came back from war, when they took off that police uniform, they were just another black guy.
Still black. They're
and
still
like,
black. And that's it. And so it's like, yeah, don't forget it. And so just know with your content, man, there are people that support you, that love you. I'm one of them. At the end of the day, I am still black, and I'm gonna be a black man watching your content. You're looking at it through the eyes of a black man, and supporting as much as I can. I trust you. So just don't let me down, and I'll do the same on my end.
I wanted, and that's the thing, is I wanted to make sure like people know like your behind the scenes is different than my behind the scenes. What you experience is different from what I experience, and like I think that's the main thing. That I think it's so important to know the behind the scenes and what really happens in people's lives. Like that is my number one goal with doing this.